Some of my favorite shots don't move at all. Which is kind of funny because when I first started making videos, I tried every possible way to make a shot more interesting. Every cool shot seemed to require another person behind the camera. And honestly, sometimes it really does. But after filming hundreds of videos, I started noticing that the shots I loved most were usually the ones where I left the camera alone. The camera isn't moving, but somehow the shot still feels alive. Hi, my name is Pear and I've been creating videos for a while now. And 99% of my shots are filmed entirely by myself. No crew, no assistant, usually just me, a tripod, and a Sony a5100 trying our best. And over time, I started paying attention to why certain still shots worked, while others didn't. So in this video, I want to break down a few things I've learned. What makes a still shot feel alive? One thing I've learned is that when a shot isn't working, it's probably not about your camera. I'm sorry. Most of the time, it's the light. I have filmed in beautiful locations and somehow made them look totally boring. And I have filmed in random corners in my tiny house and end up loving the footage. Usually the difference was just where the light was coming from. Everyone has their own approach to lighting, but my recipe is pretty simple. I'll move about 45 degrees from the light source and shoot toward it. That way part of the subject falls into shadow, which usually creates more depth. A lot of my older shots felt flat, and I couldn't really explain why. I thought maybe I needed a better location or maybe a better lens. But most of the time, the problem was much simpler. Everything was happening on the same visual plane. Once I started adding foreground elements or shooting through things, the frame immediately felt more immersive. Depth helps create the feeling that you're stepping into a world inside the frame. Framing is probably one of the most powerful tools in solo filmmaking. When the camera stays locked, composition becomes the movement. 2 steps to the left can completely change how a shot feels. A wider frame feels observational, and a close-up feels personal. Same moment, completely different feeling. This is probably my favorite one. I think people hear still shot and think of something static, but some of my favorite still shots feel incredibly alive. And it's usually because something small is happening inside the frame. Leaves moving in the wind, stream rising from the food stall, someone walking through the background, a yellow bus passing at exactly the right moment. Tiny things, but somehow those are often the details I remember most. Take a look at this. Both shots are technically still, but only one draws you in. Once I started relying on less camera movement, I had to find other ways to keep a sequence interesting. Because filmmaking isn't about creating one beautiful frame. It's about creating a relationship between frames so they can tell a story. And now the question became, how do you connect them together? If you're into filmmaking, storytelling, or learning how to create cinematic videos with what you already have, subscribe to Storyblocks. We have got a lot more coming. How to actually build scenes with still shots. Now let's take something incredibly ordinary, making coffee. On paper, it's not that interesting, but when you break it down into actions, things change. Now you have multiple shots connected by one action, and the edit starts building itself. Walking is another one I use all the time, mostly because it's just easy. As solo creators, we don't always have access to crazy locations or elaborate setups, but we all go places, and the action of walking becomes the thing that connects every shot. Suddenly, it's not just about a location anymore. You're giving the viewer something to follow, and you just created a scene out of literally walking somewhere. How I actually built these scenes. Once the footage is captured, that's when the real creative process starts for me. Because when you're filming alone, you're not just the filmmaker, you're also the editor, the sound designer, The creative director. This is where Storyblocks has become part of my workflow. As someone who creates videos mostly alone, having one place for footage, music, sound effects, templates, images, it's just... The last thing I want is to be jumping between 5 different platforms trying to find what I need. One feature I have been using recently is Conversational Search. Instead of searching with specific keywords, I can describe the type of scene or feeling I'm looking for, and it helps surface footage that matches that idea. And because it's all created by professional filmmakers, artists, and musicians, the quality is usually something I don't have to think twice about. I've also been experimenting with their AI video editing tools, mostly for exploring ideas. Small things like changing the color of a light, remove something in the background, testing different moods. This is useful when you know the shot already works, but there's one small detail you would like to change. Sound is what makes your still shots come alive. When the camera stops moving, sound starts doing more of the storytelling. Let me show you something. So make sure you're not only paying attention to what people see, pay attention to what they hear. I've also become more intentional about ambient sound. They're small details, but they make a frame feels like a real place instead of just a video. This is also where Search Similar becomes useful. Once I find a sound I like, I can quickly find variations that fit the same mood. The longer I have been making videos, the more I've realized that sound isn't something you add at the end. It's part of the storytelling from the very beginning. 6 months in as a full-time creator and years into making videos, still just me and a tripod. And honestly, I wouldn't change it, because learning how to make a still frame work taught me more about filmmaking than any piece of gear ever could.